This is my stepsister, just a nurse. And then they laughed. Not loud, not cruel, just enough to sting. A few chuckles, a couple of smirks, someone whispering behind a champagne glass. Tell me something. What would you do in that moment? Smile, pretend it didn't matter, or sit there, like I did, and say nothing, because you knew something they didn't? I didn't laugh. I just looked at Vanessa. Perfect Vanessa. Flawless makeup, designer dress, standing at the center of the room like she owned it. And maybe she thought she did. The wedding dinner was exactly what you'd expect. Crystal chandeliers, soft violin music, tables filled with people who measured worth in money, titles, and last names. And then there was me, Maya Thompson, 29, nurse. Apparently, just a nurse. But here's the thing. I almost didn't come. I had a shift I could have taken, a perfectly good excuse to stay at the hospital where things actually mattered, where people didn't care about appearances, where nobody laughed when you said what you did for a living. So why did I show up? That's the part no one in that room knew. Not Vanessa, not her fiancé Ethan, not a single guest sipping expensive wine and pretending to be impressed. Because as I sat there, quietly folding my napkin, I started noticing things. Small things. Vanessa checking her phone, again and again, her smile flickering just for a second every time the screen lit up. Ethan leaning in, whispering something to her. She brushed him off too quickly, too sharply. Something wasn't right, and I could feel it. You ever get that feeling? Like you're watching a perfect moment, but there's a crack in it somewhere? I leaned back slightly in my chair, scanning the room. That's when I saw him, a man I didn't recognize, standing near the edge of the room, silent, still, watching. Not the bride, not the groom, me. And then, without warning, he stepped forward. The music faded, conversation slowed, and just like that, the entire room shifted. He stopped at our table, looked directly at me, and when he opened his mouth, everything changed. That man wasn't supposed to be there. You could feel it instantly. The shift, the tension, the way conversations died mid-sentence as he stepped closer. Who was he? Tall, composed, sharp suit but not flashy, the kind of presence that didn't ask for attention, it just took it. And yet, nobody at that table recognized him, except maybe Vanessa, because the moment she saw his face, her entire body stiffened. Did you catch that? That tiny flicker behind her perfect smile? Yeah, I did. Ethan leaned toward her, lowering his voice. Do you know him? Vanessa laughed too quickly, too lightly. Of course not. Probably just someone who got the wrong room. But here's the thing. He didn't look lost. He didn't look confused. He looked certain. And he was still staring at me. Not Vanessa, not Ethan, me. My chest tightened slightly as I searched my memory. Had I seen him before? There was something familiar about his face. Not obvious, not immediate, but enough to make my mind race. And suddenly, I wasn't in that wedding anymore. I was somewhere else. Bright lights, the smell of antiseptic, voices calling out numbers, urgency, chaos. A hospital room. But before I could place it, before the memory could fully form, Vanessa stood up, clinking her glass loudly, forcing the room's attention back to her. Anyway, she said, flashing that polished smile again, let's not let interruptions ruin the evening. People chuckled politely, some nodded. Control, that's what she was doing, taking it back. But the man didn't move, didn't smile, didn't leave. Instead, he took one slow step closer to the table, and now everyone was watching him. Vanessa's smile tightened. Excuse me, this is a private event. He didn't even look at her. He kept his eyes on me. And suddenly, something clicked. Not fully, not clearly, but enough to make my pulse spike. Because I had seen him before. Not like this, not standing, not speaking, not alive like this. He opened his mouth, and in a calm, steady voice that cut through the entire room, he said, "3 months ago, you were the one who refused to let me die." Silence. Complete silence. My breath caught, and that's when I finally realized exactly who he was. 3 months ago, he was dying. That sentence didn't just hang in the air, it froze the entire room. No music, no whispers, nothing. Just him and me. And suddenly, it all came rushing back. The ambulance doors slamming open, a body being wheeled in, unconscious, barely breathing. Blood. So much blood. "Multiple internal injuries," someone shouted. "BP dropping." And me, right there in the middle of it. "Stay with me," I kept saying, even though he couldn't hear me. Or maybe, somehow, he could. I took a slow breath, back in the present now. "You were in the ER," I said quietly, my voice steadier than I felt. "Car accident. Severe trauma." He nodded once. Yes, and everyone else was ready to give up. A murmur rippled through the guests. Everyone else ready to give up? I shook my head slightly. That's not how it works. But he didn't let me downplay it. "You stayed. You pushed. You made them try again." He paused. "You saved my life." And just like that, the room shifted. Those same people who laughed minutes ago, now they were staring at me differently. Not amused, not dismissive. Respectful. Curious. Even impressed. I noticed Vanessa slowly sitting back down. Her expression had changed. That confidence? Gone. Replaced with something else. Fear. But Daniel, because now I remembered his name, wasn't done. He turned slightly, addressing the entire table now. "My name is Daniel Reyes," he said, "and before that accident, I was in the middle of finalizing a major investment deal." Ethan straightened immediately. You could almost see the realization hit him. "Wait," Ethan said, leaning forward. "Daniel Reyes from—" Daniel nodded. "Yes, that Daniel Reyes." Now the tension wasn't just emotional. It was financial. Important. Serious. "I was planning to invest heavily into your company," Daniel continued calmly. Ethan's face lit up, just for a second, until Daniel added, "But recently I discovered something that made me pause." That second of hope? Gone. Vanessa's fingers tightened around her glass. Too tight. "I think this isn't the time or place," she started quickly. Daniel cut her off. "It's exactly at the time." And now he finally looked at her. Really looked at her. The kind of look that strips away every layer of confidence someone has. "I found discrepancies," he said, "in documents that passed through your hands." The room tensed again. Ethan turned slowly toward Vanessa. What is he talking about? Vanessa laughed. But this time, no one joined her. "I have no idea what he means," she said, a little too fast. Daniel tilted his head slightly, almost disappointed. Then he said something that made my stomach drop. "Would you like me to explain, or should I start with the evidence?" Vanessa's face went pale. And in that moment, everything started to fall apart. Vanessa's smile disappeared instantly. Not faded, not cracked. Gone. Like someone had flipped a switch. And suddenly, the woman who had been glowing under chandeliers just minutes ago looked exposed. "Daniel," she said, forcing a laugh that didn't land, "this is ridiculous. You can't just walk into my wedding and start making accusations." But here's the thing. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't argue. He just reached into his jacket and pulled out a folder. Thick. Organized. Real. "You're right," he said calmly. I can't make accusations." He placed it gently on the table. "So I brought proof. Now tell me, what would you do if that landed in front of you?" Because Vanessa didn't touch it. She just stared at it like it might explode. Ethan, on the other hand, he grabbed it immediately. "Vanessa, what is this?" His voice had changed, lower, sharper. She shook her head quickly. "I don't know, this is insane, he's lying." But Ethan was already flipping through the pages, and with every page, his expression darkened. Altered projections, revised numbers. These aren't what we submitted. His eyes snapped up to her. "These documents came from your email." Silence. The kind that presses in on your chest. "I was helping you," Vanessa said quickly. "I was making things look better for investors. That's normal." "No, it's not," Daniel said firmly. And now the room wasn't just watching, they were judging. Whispers started again, but this time they weren't amused. They were sharp, curious, ruthless. I felt a strange stillness settle over me as I watched it all unfold, because suddenly something clicked. A memory. Vanessa, weeks ago, casual, curious, asking me questions. "Hey, in your hospital, how strict are record systems? Like, can things be changed after the fact?" At the time, I thought it was random. Now? It wasn't. She'd been testing boundaries, seeing what she could get away with, and she thought I wouldn't notice. Daniel spoke again, cutting through the rising tension. "I had my team review everything after I recovered. Every transaction, every projection tied to the deal." He paused. "And what we found wasn't a mistake. It was a pattern." Vanessa's breathing quickened. It was a pattern. Ethan stepped back slightly, like the space between them had suddenly become dangerous. "Vanessa," he said quietly, "tell me this isn't true." But she didn't answer. Because she couldn't. Daniel closed the folder slowly. "I've already submitted everything." Vanessa's head snapped up. "Submitted where?" He held her gaze. "Authorities." And just like that, the wedding wasn't a celebration anymore. It was a collapse. The silence didn't break all at once. It cracked, slowly, unevenly, like everything in that room was trying to process what had just happened, and failing. "Authorities?" Ethan repeated, his voice low, almost unrecognizable. Daniel nodded once, no hesitation. "I had everything verified before I acted." And then, finally, everything was laid out. Vanessa hadn't just adjusted a few numbers. She had systematically altered financial projections tied to Ethan's company, making it appear more profitable, more stable, more irresistible to investors like Daniel. Emails traced back to her, files edited under her credentials, timelines that didn't match the official reports. It wasn't a mistake. It was deliberate. And Ethan, he had no idea. "I trusted you," he said quietly, staring at her like he didn't recognize her anymore. Vanessa's composure shattered. "I did this for us," she snapped, desperation spilling through. "You needed that investment. I made it happen." "No," Daniel said calmly. "You manipulated it into happening." That was the line. The final one. Ethan stepped back, shaking his head. "This is over," he said. Not loud, not dramatic. Final. The wedding didn't end with music or dancing. It ended with people quietly leaving, conversations cut short, glances exchanged, phones already buzzing with the stories spreading beyond those walls. By morning, it was everywhere in their circles. The consequences came fast. Daniel officially withdrew his investment, Ethan's company launched an internal audit to protect itself, and Vanessa, she was formally investigated for fraud. Friends distanced themselves, invitations disappeared. The same people who laughed earlier now avoided even saying her name. And me, I went back to work. Same hospital, same long shifts, same quiet purpose. But something had changed. Not in my job, in how people saw me. A few days later, I received a handwritten letter from Daniel. Short, simple. You didn't just save my life that night. You reminded me what integrity looks like. Thank you. I folded the note carefully and slipped it into my bag. No spotlight, no applause, just truth, finally seen. And as I walked back into the hospital that day, I couldn't help but think, they laughed when she called me just a nurse. But in the end, I was the only one in that room who had nothing to hide.